Hey, gorgeous people. I'm Alexandra Blair of 9 Lives Astrology, another year older and wiser this week. Welcome to First Light, my Monday morning coffee chat show where we talk about everything happening under the sun in astrology through the lens of art and archetype and messy personal mythologies that you're already living, all before I have to get up and make another cup of coffee. Let's get into it. We have a lot of great transits to talk about this week. Mars is entering Virgo, finally ending that saga of the cold, hard winter that we've been living through. Jupiter is squaring Neptune. The sun comes into Cancer. We've got a summer solstice on our hands, folks. We're going to get into all of that and more. But first, I want to talk through some of my favorite comments that I saw this week. So on my Instagram, I shared some pictures, some candid, real life, humbling little pictures of all the different, insane, nonsensical ways that I have learned this year with Jupiter transiting my natal sun in Gemini. I have learned while packing. I have learned while cooking dinner. I have learned while doing laundry. I have learned while walking on the treadmill. I have learned while crying on the treadmill. It's been an insane year of Jupiter in Gemini, and I'm still trying to make sense of all of the things that have happened to me during this year. This post on my Instagram was a little bit of a reflection on that, and I got some really nice comments from you guys there. So thank you for your support and your encouragement and also your commiseration, because I know that a lot of people have felt this way too. Speaking of Jupiter and Gemini, Red Druidess says, literally the day Jupiter moved into Gemini, I received my first ever summons for jury duty at 40 years old. I have my natal Chiron, North Node, and Moon in Gemini opposite Uranus and Sagittarius. I was selected to be on the jury. Although it was super disruptive to my daily routine, it was actually a really rewarding experience. I love this comment, and this is exactly the kind of complicated, not straightforward, not one-dimensional Jupiter experience that I was talking about in the video that I posted last week, actually, about Jupiter transits and how they're different for every person. This is such a great story. Thank you for sharing. Last week, for the full moon in Sagittarius, we actually also talked about mutual reception between the moon and Jupiter. And Charlotte Comfort 2446 says, I just checked my solar return for October. It has this moon Jupiter mutual reception. Strokes non-existent beard. Wonder what that will bring. Well, Charlotte Comfort, I will say in October, we have a pretty awesome series of astrological transits that put us from a grand air trine with stuff moving through Libra into a grand water trine with stuff moving through Scorpio. So you probably got some of that in your solar return chart too. And that looks pretty exciting. I would say it would probably bring some kind of luck and some auspicious changing of circumstance. However, as I said in my video last week, so much depends on your natal relationship to Jupiter and a lot of the qualifying details about your charts. You'll have to report back and let us know how it goes. Finally, Venus Stromberg 1500 says, ooh, Jorge Luis Borges and Infinity. Nobody bends the mind quite like he does. I'm still not over El Ajedrez. I may never be, but then when is never? Venus Stromberg, I have to agree. He has so many little gems and snippets that I've read over the years that have really stuck with me. All right, boys and girls, the horrors of winter are well and truly over. If I had to encapsulate our winter 2024-2025 experience in one brief moment, it would probably be something like this.
We have our orders. You know why it is? I know how it is. And the bleak midwinter.
Making the best of a grizzled, frazzled, difficult little astrological situation. And this is us now.
Guys don't exactly want to jump your bones when you're metal mouth.
What is that attitude? We are young. Heartache to heartache we stand. Love is a battlefield. We are young. Heartache to heartache we stand.
It all starts right here with Mars entering Virgo. So Mars's retrograde went from early Leo back to Cancer. So Mars has been out of that shadow of the retrograde for quite some time. But Mars entering Virgo really means that this experience of the Mars-Pluto opposition in a sign-based way and all of the little machinations and workings that are triggering that stuff are over. They're over. The horrors of winter are well and truly over, baby. Pay attention here because Mars will retrograde in early Virgo next year. Now, don't get too wrapped up in that because it's true, but we have a lot of time between now and then. So don't already start catastrophizing about the next Mars retrograde. Let's take a moment here to celebrate that this Mars retrograde and this Mars and Leo, Pluto nonsense is well and truly collapsing. I love that the moon is in Aquarius, opposing Mars at 29 Leo, 29 Aquarius, on Mars's way out the door. This is the loosest, ghostiest thread of that Mars Pluto, with the moon tying it together with her wide orb of engagement. So the luminaries have up to 15 degrees or 13 degrees. It just depends on which text you consult, but they have wider orbs of engagement. And the moon in particular is revealing here how astrology loops and loops and loops and loops back around. I'm going to sound like a broken record at this point, but I think this is the last time I'm going to have to mention this Mars Pluto opposition. But the moon in the middle of Aquarius is reaching back for Pluto in early Aquarius and also reaching forward for Mars in late Leo. The moon in the middle of Aquarius is also still squaring both Uranus and Venus in Taurus. So in this way, we think about the moon as the spider weaving the spider web. She's looping around and around and tying things together. And that's exactly why she has that archetype associated with her. It's really beautiful to watch. And again, this may be the loosest, ghostliest little echo of this, something you probably will only notice if you are writing every day in a honeycomb planner or taking detailed notes about what's going on in your life. You might feel something here. But for the rest of us, this is just one of those times when in human experience, we may spend a day ruminating about something that happened in the past, or we might receive a piece of mail that kind of triggers a thought about something that happened in the past, or we might get a text message that reveals to us, oh, we've well and truly resolved ourselves on this matter. This is the beauty and the nuance of human experience and how astrology can really speak to it. So we kick off the week on Tuesday with Mars entering Virgo, and by Wednesday, Jupiter will square Neptune. Jupiter will be at 2 degrees of Cancer. This is a big, slow transit. Now, these planets conjoined in Pisces in April of 2022, and this is an opening square for that conjunction. So you can think about this a little bit like the waxing moon phase. These planets are growing in distance, growing in power, particularly Jupiter, which moves a lot faster than Neptune, is growing and striking out and taking and making changes. By the time Jupiter and Neptune reconjoin in Aries in 2034, Saturn will already be all the way in Cancer. That's how long it actually takes. It takes these planets 13 years to come together, and it's always Jupiter that applies to Neptune because Jupiter moves so fast, and Neptune spends about 14 years in every sign. So whatever was going on for you in April 2022 around this transit is now in a moment of differentiation and individuation. It is striking out and building and growing in a way that threatens to expand our sense of self. Oh no, don't threaten me with a good time. But Jupiter and Neptune are actually also squaring in this moment. And when we think about the square as an aspect, we think about pressure and a little knife poke, a martial little knife poke from one planet to another. So this to me feels like Neptune in Aries is possibly getting a little carried away with ideologies and theologies that are masquerading as identity, as self. Jupiter in Cancer is actually begging us to be a little more empathetic. Don't forget where you came from. Don't forget your love and care for others. Don't forget your empathy as you get maybe carried away or start adopting some ideologies as part of your personality and yourself. This is an interesting tension between the two because if we follow that cycle out, right, Jupiter will be in Libra when it opposes Neptune in Aries and then in detriment in Capricorn when it forms the closing square. So it really does look like Neptune wins us over by the end, and some of our zeal does become integrated into our personality. But that's a story for another video. Remember, in this square, what is real. Much like the movie Inception. When you're at the point where you think you are in reality, keep looking, look further, pull those threads, and stay vigilant and keep looking for those signs. Now, that's fine and dandy in the theoretical, but what am I actually talking about in our real life? Well, I'm saying when you think you found reality, take a closer look. Are you just confusing principles you hold and ideas you have about philosophy or maybe your paradigm for building blocks of the human experience, for your fundamental truth? I guess it's also a little bit like Descartes' wax experiment, where he was really interrogating the difference between our sensory perception of reality and the nature of reality that is unknowable epistemologically, but exists in theory somewhere out there. Now, he was doing that by looking at wax. He was saying when a candle melts, the wax changes shape and texture and state of matter, but it's still the same wax. And so he was calling out the limited nature of our own sensory perception. And that's what I'm asking you to do here. Is melted wax still wax? Are your sensory tools part of reality? Or can we acknowledge that there's a gap between what is objective reality and what we experience as humans? There might be something fruitful for us to interrogate there. And there's also a little something there about Pluto's allegory of the cave, where people who are in the cave, who've never been exposed to the world outside the cave, actually not only believe that the shadows they're seeing on the wall are reality, but they become almost violently skeptical of anyone claiming anything otherwise and trying to introduce new concepts into their life. Let's learn from their mistakes. On Friday, June 20th, the sun enters Cancer. This is such a sweet summer solstice. This is the sweetest summer solstice I have seen astrologically of recent memory. So even though we have the entire week of Jupiter squaring Saturn, the sun moves in on Friday into that square with Jupiter. And at that moment, Jupiter kind of moves over to 2 degrees and starts what we call separating from the square from Saturn. The sun is really strengthening Jupiter's side of the square, which has exalted Jupiter in Cancer, and the sun in the sign of a fellow luminary, which is, if not an outright condition of dignity, a good sign. These two together are squaring a super weak, disenfranchised Saturn. This is happening on Venus's day on Friday, and the astrology of Venus is really cute on this day as well. We have the moon in Taurus conjoining Venus, conjoining Uranus at the end of Taurus. So this is such a different square than the Saturn-Jupiter square that we were seeing throughout 2024, which was stuck and grinding things to a screeching halt and limiting our flexibility. This is a super empowered, emotional, heart-centered approach to whatever is going on that is challenging our sense of exile from the social norms, or the ways that we feel like we can never fit in and agree with others, or the ways that we have blockers around our own identity and our own visibility. This is such a different square. On Sunday, Saturn square sort of completes, and that tension is at its most exact. Again, this is a really empowered situation for the sun, and this sun-Saturn square really feels a little bit like the individual versus the system. For now, in this context, because the Cancer part of the chart is so strong, it's more caring, it's more empathetic, it's more nurturing. I'm thinking about some current events that are happening when I say things like the individual versus the system, but it's caring. I'm thinking of like the protests that are going on in LA right now against ICE raids. That is the caring individual versus the disenfranchisement of the system. So think about some of those themes and how they're playing out in your life and how you're feeling. Don't forget to interrogate the space between the ideals you hold and your fundamental experience of reality. Every time you think you've cut down to that fundamental level, cut further. You can cut further. You can cut further. Maybe this is just a philosophical mind game that I'm challenging you to play. Sounds perfect for a Jupiter-Neptune contact. All right, we've officially reached the part of the show where I talk about how I, as an animist, pagan, astrologer, human being, I'm going to be using the astrology of this week. Well, you're already seeing me wearing it right here, right here. This is all about the summer solstice for me. I love celebrating the summer solstice. I always do a really big offering for Apollo this week. I charge up all my little sun jewelry that is devoted to Apollo in some way, or devoted to the sun in my worship of the sun. I give a big bundle of rosemary to Apollo. I light some candles. I play some Orphic hymns. There are some really heartbreakingly beautiful renditions of the Orphic hymn to Apollo that different musicians have recorded, and I love listening to those. Most importantly, I spend plenty of time this week in lizard mode, just soaking up the sun like a little astrological solar panel. These months with unadulterated sun are so nourishing to my soul, even as I shrivel and shrink and burn like a little Texas tumbleweed in the 100-degree heat. It's sweaty, it's grimy, it's messy work, but it's mine. and it's honest. No matter who you are, or what you do, or what you believe, try to find some time this week to celebrate the summer solstice, which is a time that marks the sun at its maximum power. So this is the longest day of sunlight of the year. And for as long as there have been humans, we have been celebrating this day and we have been revering the sun. So whether you wake up and you do sun salutations, whether you just take a walk in a time and a day when you wouldn't normally take a walk, no matter what it is, whether you just listen to a playlist on Spotify that's called like Sunshine Vibes or Songs About the Sun, it doesn't matter. Find something that feels really authentic to you and go for it. Just incorporate a little bit of sun into your life. Whether you wear a shirt or earrings that say sun on it, or wear yellow or gold, or if you're going to do an entire ceremonial ritual and make carneps and do an entire ribeye steak offering to Apollo, whatever it is, find something that's authentic and try to do it as a way to connect more deeply with these archetypes and energies that we talk about every week astrologically. All right, we know what that sound means. My coffee is done, and so the show must be done. If you want to book a one-on-one session with me, you can do so on my website, 9livesastrology.com. You can also connect more deeply with me on Instagram or on my newsletter, where I share more of my spiritual and devotional practice and the stuff that I have going on personally. Have a great week and stay sunny.